Wow. And as we begin to close out, I wanted to invite you to talk about Julian Assange. He's been, you know, folks might know he's the Australian editor, publisher, and activist who founded WikiLeaks. He was freed about 3 weeks ago after agreeing to a plea bargain with the U.S. Department of Justice, and received a sentence of 62 months in British prison while he awaited extradition. Um, I know that you've been very outspoken on his ordeal, and I just wanted to invite you to share that with our audience. Your reaction to what he's been through, but what might be in his future now.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most important and pivotal figures in my lifetime. I mean, people, partly by design, people have forgotten how powerful and influential WikiLeaks was. It was definitely responsible for a lot of the spark, the power behind things like the Arab Spring and the and Occupy and so many other efforts to change our world for the better. And if it had been allowed to continue, it would have brought in a new time of transparency, of anti-corruption. But of course, the corrupt don't want to allow that. So instead, they very carefully dismantled and attacked every facet of WikiLeaks. They viewed it as more dangerous than a gun or a missile, to make sure that Assange and WikiLeaks were destroyed. And part of that plan was to come up with false charges against Julian Assange and make sure he could not do his work. It was to make sure WikiLeaks could not get any funding. PayPal cut them off. All the credit cards cut them off. It was also to go after various board members and other figures at WikiLeaks. And they largely succeeded. They especially succeeded at destroying Assange's life. And he was in essentially solitary confinement, 23 hours a day in Belmarsh prison for 7 years, and essentially all the time in the Ecuadorian embassy, where he was basically had 1 to 2 rooms that he could walk around in the Ecuadorian embassy. And this is what we do to someone who reveals the truth, who reveals the crimes of the U.S. empire. Nothing WikiLeaks ever printed, ever, not a sentence, was proven false or fake or inaccurate. And that is the polar opposite of every news source you can name on mainstream media. They often have retractions they admit themselves. Many of the times they don't admit them, but they are proven wrong over and over and over and over and over again. And yet the guy who's getting it right, the guy who's actually speaking the truth, he's tortured in prison. Now, in terms of the plea deal, if I were him, and as a supporter of him and his life and what he's achieved, I absolutely think he should have taken the plea deal. He should be a free man. He has been tortured enough. I don't care what the plea deal said. I think he should be free. But he knows this as well. The plea deal is a joke. They forced him to acknowledge that basically he's guilty of violating the Espionage Act. But a few reasons that's ridiculous. One is freedom of speech should allow you to speak freely about the truth, which this was all the truth. Another is that for the first several years that WikiLeaks was printing these things, they were working with mainstream media. Guardian, Reuters, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post were all printing their articles. We're all using these as major stories. And then once the U.S. government said, oh, no, we're going to attack the person doing this, all of those cowardly, pathetic, pro-empire outlets turned and abandoned him and basically just let him hang. But then another reason it's ridiculous is because Julian Assange is not a U.S. citizen. He never operated from the United States. WikiLeaks was never in the United States. It's basically the U.S. setting a precedent where we can prosecute and attack any journalist for saying things we don't like or revealing secrets we don't like, which is a horrifying precedent for journalism or press in any regards, but especially for non-U.S. citizens who have nothing to do with the U.S. And now all of a sudden they got to think, oh, I could be prosecuted by the US for revealing the truth.
Yeah, it's shameful, but like you, I'm glad he's free with his wife and children. Far from our clutches, let's hope. Um, Lee, I never thought I would enjoy speaking with a direct descendant of Robert E. Lee this much. Um,
Yeah.
please tell folks where they can follow and support your work.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I have. If you're a podcast person, I have podcasts out there. You can probably type in Lee Camp and find at least one of them. If you're a video person, I live stream 4 days a week at rumble.com and youtube.com/moment of clarity. But if you forget all these things, or you want to find my books or all this stuff, it's all at linktree.com/Lee Camp. It's a lot to remember, so I just put it all up at Linktree.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Lee Camp. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.